Hello, and welcome to the Scott Mize Show, a podcast focused on health, diet, bodybuilding, and philosophy. I interview experts, doctors, coaches, and N=1 case studies to answer your questions about improving health, achieving your best physique, and making sustainable progress. We'll cover topics from carnivore and ketogenic diets, to bodybuilding, to life philosophy, and everything in between. Enjoy the show. Are you looking to lose fat, gain muscle, or improve your health, or all of the above? Interested in working with me one-on-one? Stop spinning your wheels, because I offer personalized coaching where I can help you reach your goals, whether it be fat loss, muscle building, improving your health, or all of the above. I provide tailored nutrition, training, and supplementation advice, one or all of them together, with 24/7 ongoing support to help guide you every step of the way. You can email me at scott.mize@gmail.com. Click the link in the description of this episode to schedule your free consult call to go over your goals, answer questions with no obligation. Let's take your physique or health journey to the next level. This episode is brought to you by Optimal Carnivore. A lot of people ask me about organ meats. Do you need to eat organ meat? How do I eat organ meat? And Optimal Carnivore was created by carnivores for carnivores. They created a unique organ complex from grass-fed animals in New Zealand. It includes 9 different organs: liver, brain, heart, thymus, kidney, spleen, pancreas. And taking just 6 capsules is the same as eating an ounce of raw organ meat from the butcher. I've been personally using Optimal Carnivore for years. My wife and I use it almost every single day. It's great when I don't have fresh organs available, don't feel like eating them, don't feel like cooking them, or if I'm traveling, I know I can get a variety of super high quality organs daily. And they have lots of different products, from their beef liver product to their organ complex to their brain product and their bone and marrow product. They have excellent products filled with highest quality ingredients, and you can get 10% off your order and support the show by going to the link in the description of this episode and using the code Carnivore10 at checkout. That's Carnivore10 to save and support the show. Thank you. Sam Feltham is the director of the Public Health Collaboration UK, a charity dedicated to improving the health of the public and saving the NHS money at the same time. Sam has been in the health and fitness industry for over a decade. Starting out as a party coordinator at a sports center, he worked his way up to study at the European Institute of Fitness and qualified as a master personal trainer. I first followed Sam way back in 2015, 2016 with his show Smash the Fat, a YouTube channel about basically a low carb / keto podcast before keto was mainstream and before podcasts were mainstream, where he interviewed guests like Dr. David Unwin and did some very interesting 5,000 calorie self-experiments with different foods to see the results on body composition. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I was thinking before the show, I still remember fondly, you had this video of you eating a giant bowl of like beef and cauliflower, watching Monsters Inc. And it was just like you getting tired and sweating and like finishing the movie. It was really funny.
Yeah, but I was kind of like recreating that scene in Friends where Rachel, she makes like a trifle, but like half of the page is ripped, so it's like half a trifle, British trifle. This is like a jam and kind of sponge type thing with a cottage pie, which is like a beef type pie. And so like you've got beef, jam, like, you know, Victorian sponge and things, and Joey just like absolutely loves it and smashes it through. But I did it, but low carb. So it's basically like this massive trifle of like 5,000 calories in one sitting or something crazy like that. And so that video is still up there. So if people want to watch me eat in pain, then
I'll have a link to it. It's definitely worth a watch. Has only grown in value. I'll have a link to that. So I'd love to start with kind of like, what's your health story and background, and how did you become interested in diet and low carb as a health intervention in the first place?
Yeah, I've had a fairly varied career, let's say. At university, I studied website design. And this like was when, you know, web design was HTML basically.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have WordPress, you didn't have all the bits and bobs. So I did that, and then I did a year of working as a website designer, and I quickly discovered that I just didn't want to sit behind a desk for the rest of my life. I'm a bit more proactive than that. So after that year, I managed to save a bit of money, and then decided to do some world travel. So I went to New Zealand and trained as a snowboard instructor, basically out in New Zealand. And from there, I ended up doing back-to-back seasons between the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere. So I'd go from New Zealand, and my second season after that was in Vermont, a little mountain resort called a Chemo, if anybody knows that one. And then I went back to New Zealand, and then went back to the States in Colorado at a resort called Winter Park, which is like the closest, you know, one to Denver. And then back to New Zealand, and then I went back to the Northern Hemisphere, did it in Austria and Switzerland this time, went back to New Zealand one last time, and then back for my last season, which was like, 2010, in Banff in Canada. So I kind of, you know, hip hopped here, there, and everywhere, but it was in Banff where I started to think about, you know, what's my future actually going to look like, because I was getting a bit sick and tired of changing location every 6 months and having to make it a whole new group of new friends and things like that. However fun it was, you know, it was great during your mid-20s. But anyway, so during that last season, I actually watched this TV show called The Last 10 Pounds, with this. Do you know the program at all? You ever come across?
No,
I think it's Canadian,
Okay.
specifically. So, you know, Canadian viewers, you might know what it is, but it's with this ex CFL player, who's, you know, turned into a trainer and stuff like that, and he trains, you know, people to lose that last 10 pounds to get down to their ideal weight. And I got really interested in it, because I'd done the gym thing before, as you mentioned. I used to work at a sports center in my younger years, and always gone to the gym and kind of, you know, tried my best at healthy eating, but I'd never really researched it or anything. But then during that season, I really got into it. And what I found was that, I mean, I'd always had asthma, and that had always been a bit difficult snowboarding. But in that last season, cleaning up my diet actually really helped out with being able to breathe at altitude. That would have been helpful 4 years prior.
Yeah.
You know, such is life. But yeah, no, cleaning up my diet towards a low carb real food diet really helped me with my asthma. Haven't had any symptoms ever since, apart from during my self experiments on the low fat fake food diet, of course, unfortunately. But that was quickly alleviated. But yeah, so really got interested there, and then thought, okay, yeah, I'd actually like to become a personal trainer. Applied to study at the European Institute of Fitness, and then that summer I managed to qualify as a master personal trainer, and then moved to London, in with my brother in his box room, and set up my own personal training business. And it was 2010, so it was at the height of kind of, you know, the fitness boot camp craze as well. And so I set up my own fitness boot camps, which were Smash the Fat, as he mentioned before. Over the next few years, I managed to grow that to 10 locations around the UK. I did it on a franchise model, basically, and that was going great guns. But in 2015, I kind of felt like I was in a bit of a philosophical quandary where, you know, I could continue with the business, and that'd be great, and, you know, helping hundreds of people, and eventually thousands every month through all of our different locations. But I always felt as though, you know, we're really always going to be battling uphill against, the healthy eating guidelines by the government and also the NHS, because the NHS is so integral to our healthcare in the UK, that you're always going to be battling up against healthcare professionals with what you're advising as a personal trainer, or at least what I was advising. And so I just thought, right, we've just got to take this head on, and the only way to do that, particularly in the UK, is by setting up a charity in order to fully focus on creating the change that we want to see. So I pitched this idea to the likes of Dr. David Unwin, his wife Dr. Jen Unwin, Trudy Deacon, Ian Lake, and everybody that's kind of still involved in the charity today. And they said, great idea, but where's the money going to come from? As always, it's always the bottom line. And I said, right, we'll run an online crowdfunding campaign and see if there's an appetite for this. Launched that in February 2016, and during that month we doubled our target, which was absolutely mind-blowing. So we had our seed money to start our little adventure, and we've been going from strength to strength ever since, basically.
That's amazing. And I remember you posting that up and talking about like how you were going to take a working, what is it called, a working
working wage,
which is like basically like the minimum the government has qualified for you to be able to get by. I thought that was very noble of you.
Thanks, man.
And I definitely want to get into the PHC more, but before we get there, what made you start the podcast and like interview, if you can call it that? It was interviewing experts on YouTube with Smash the Fat. What inspired that?
I mean, it was really at this phase where there were a couple of podcasts popping up, and I felt like I had the skills to kind of do a podcast as well, and I don't want to say I was like a trailblazer or anything, but I was a bit of ahead of the curve in terms of doing video interviews. Thank you. And I was using Google Hangouts when it was called Google Hangouts. And I did them live as well. So you could watch them live as well as, watch them afterwards on demand. I think it was just the fact that I was starting to make all of these connections around the globe. And I thought, look, we might as well really try and get their knowledge out to the people, basically. All of those interviews are still up on the YouTube channel. 130 I did in the end. I'm proud of kind of being there at the forefront.
Yeah, super high quality. I really appreciated that. And what made you try your calorie experiments? Can you talk through some of those and what were the results? Totally. I think that was just like such a cool idea and really amazing to watch.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no. So this was 2013, so 10 years ago. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Yeah, isn't it? And I figured, it was really difficult sometimes to demonstrate to my clients, the difficulty of calories, right? The calories on your plate aren't necessarily translated to the calories of how your body processes it. I really wanted to illustrate how that kind of works through real life example, and because I've always been a naturally slim individual, so I figured the only way that I can do it is by going the opposite direction, by trying to gain weight. And so I decided to do this experiment where I'd eat 3 different diets for 3 weeks each, with 3 months in between to kind of do a bit of a biochemical reset, but eat double that I usually would, right? And that ended up being over 5,000 calories. It was actually just shy of 6,000 calories in the end, per day. And the first one I did was low carb real food. So, it was eggs and salmon for breakfast with green beans. What was it? Mackerel and green beans for lunch. And then it was steak and green beans for dinner. And really kind of, I just really kept it simple. I could have like gone, more extravagant, but I just wanted to keep it simple. And then in between I ate nuts for snacks as well. And each meal was almost 1,000 calories each.
It's a lot of food.
And it is a lot of food, a lot of volume. And particularly with the nuts, it's like really having to like force them down and slowly like chew through them all. So on that one, over the 3 weeks, when calculated, the net calorie surplus, so that's the surplus calories after the protein thermogenic effect and the loss of dietary fiber and any calories I burned during exercise as well, was 47,000 calories. So according to the calorie formula, I should have put on 6.1 kilograms, which is approximately about 14 pounds. Something like that. But over those 3 weeks, I actually only put on 1.3 kilograms, which is about 3 pounds. I actually lost an inch off of my waist as well.
It's crazy. I remember you did very diligent measurements. It's really interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And like, that was the other thing. So I was trying to be at the forefront of this YouTube thing. And so I filmed each and every weigh-in that I did. So I did the measure, like, just to prove, look, everybody, I am literally standing on the scales here, looking down at the thingy. Like, this is, and I did it in the mirror as well. So like, I could kind of see, I was like, right, I'm doing it around my belly button. So it's the same point every single time and things like that. And I did that in the morning and evening. And I took the medium of the mean of those two measurements for that. But I did it, morning and night. And it was just it was quite an intense time. I couldn't do it now because I've got 2 kids, but I'm so glad that I did it when I did it. But it was absolutely incredible. And that's a really interesting example just by itself. The fact that it's so different to what the calorie formula expected me to do, right? And so 3 months later, after a bit of a biochemical reset, I did the low-fat fake food diet experiment. So this was Special K and skim milk for breakfast, chicken breast sandwiches for lunch, and then like a low-fat lasagna for dinner, and then like in between it'd be crisps, chips, for our American friends, chips and a can of Coke, which is like standard, right? Like
what most people eat.
Exactly. It really was what most people eat. And on that, I managed to calculate it so that it was also 47,000 calorie net surplus. And like the actual difference, I think it was 53 calories over 3 weeks. This isn't per day. This is over 3 weeks. I managed to get it within 53 calories over 3 weeks. So as close as you could possibly get. On that, again, the calorie formula said that I should have put on 6.1 kilograms, 14 pounds, but I actually put on 7.1 kilograms, 16 pounds. So absolutely mind-blowing that I actually went over the calorie formula.
Wow.
And then also on my waist, I put on 9.25 centimeters, so about 3.25 inches on my waist. So for a guy that's always been naturally slim, that was really scary. That was mind blowing. But not only that. During that time, as I said before, my asthmatic symptoms came back. I was getting breathless on my leisurely cycle commute to work. I couldn't imagine getting out of breath just going, like 15 miles an hour on a bike. It's like that's a pretty low level exercise for a guy like me. And I was getting out of breath. I started snoring during that time as it was a really disruptive time. But what was really interesting on that experiment was that I could have probably kept eating on that one
really
as well. On that first one, I was having to, like, the steak and the final round of nuts in the evening, I was really having to like shove it in and like kind of just, oh my gosh, I just didn't need to eat, but I had to like prove the point. But on this one, for fake food, I could have just kept on eating
Crazy.
more and more and more. Totally, man. And so what I did after that was kind of like an experiment to be. So I actually decided that what I thought would be interesting was if I just kept on eating at calorie maintenance, on going back to a low carb diet, if I eat it just calorie maintenance, can I maintain that weight gain? Right. And so I calculated my calorie maintenance level. So for those that don't know, it's the amount of calories that you'd eat to maintain your current weight, right? And so I calculated that every day using the Harris-Benedict formula, which is like the standard one for working out calories for you as an individual. And that was about 3,500 at that point. And I ate that just eating, my usual low carb real food diet, eggs and bacon for breakfast, and again fish for lunch and some steak for dinner basically. But over those 3 weeks, of the 7.1 kilograms that I had gained, I lost 6.1 kilograms.
Wow.
Right. So, and this was eating at calorie maintenance. So I lost the vast majority of the weight that I'd actually gained by eating at calorie maintenance. Absolutely incredible that I did that. Yeah, no, it was totally easy because I was, I probably could have done a fast within that time, quite easily, because I wasn't particularly hungry. But I wanted to prove the point that I could still lose the weight at calorie maintenance.
Yeah,
which was really interesting. But 3 months later, I do the third and final experiment, which was this very low fat vegan real food diet. So I took the fat percentage down to 15%. That's like the lowest level of fat that you should be eating, even according to like the standard recommendations, that you shouldn't go below 15% of your diet. So I took it down to the lowest level that was recommended even by kind of our governments basically. And then just breakfast was porridge and water with some agave nectar. And what was funny, actually, I did the first day with honey, and I didn't even think about it that isn't technically vegan, because it comes from bees.
That is funny.
So I put that out on Twitter, got a massive barrage of honey isn't vegan. I was like, okay, all right, I'll switch it to agave nectar. All right. So I did that. But anyway, on that, for lunch it was like beans, like a 3 beans salad thing with I managed to fit in a shot of olive oil every day. Like into my calculations. So that was something that I could feel like at least I'm getting, I don't know, some level of fatty goodness. Then dinner was like potatoes and water chestnuts or something weird like that. But anyway, on that one, the net calorie surplus, I could only get it to 40,000. So that's 7,000 calories less than the other two. Now, the reason for that was because of the sheer volume of food and the type of foods I was eating. The fiber was the thing that really hit me. So the recommended daily amount for fiber, at least in the UK, is 30 grams per day. I was eating 175 grams of fiber every single day through that diet. And so it was just, my wife wasn't happy with me basically over that time.
Sure.
I was not a happy bunny through that time. That was the only reason that I couldn't get it to that. And so, but according to the calorie formula, I should have put on 5.2 kilograms, which is approximately probably about 12 pounds. And during that time, I actually put on 4.7 kilograms. So not quite what the calorie formula expected, but certainly the vast majority of it, but also a lot more than the first low carb real food experiment,
Right.
where I'd eaten, technically 7,000 calories more. So that was really interesting. And what I found on this one was that I was really satiated. I really was struggling to eat it all as well. Always managed it, but it was a real struggle. So satiation wise, that was fine. But then my mental clarity was really deterred during that time. I just couldn't think straight, basically. But then also my asthmatic symptoms did come on as well during that time as well, and that's probably the amount of carbohydrates, because even the American Asthmatic Association does recommend a level of carbohydrate restriction for alleviating asthmatic symptoms.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is really interesting that they do that. They can see like the effect that it has on blood pressure, and so that's part of the mechanism for asthma. As well as I'm sure inflammation is involved in that too. Its effect on blood pressure has a massive effect on asthma. So that was just, and then my waist circumference, sorry, I forgot to mention. So on that one, I put on 7 3/4 centimeters on my waist, which is like 2.5 inches on my waist. So again, comparing that to the first one where I lost an inch, and then on this one I put on 2.5 inches, even though I ate 7,000 calories less. So basically, like my presentation to the world was that calories is a lot more complicated than you think. Basically. And it's not just like you can just calculate the calories and expect your body to react in the same way, even if you're eating different foods. And that you do absolutely have to take into account the hormonal effects that the foods are having on your body, as well as the quantity does matter somewhere in there. But the fact that you can't just kind of say like just eat, just focus on the calories. That's just not going to cut it.
I think is a fantastic and catchy way to present the information and capture people's attention. I think you did get some like mainstream media coverage for it too, did you not?
I got in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's pretty funny. But yeah, I'm a huge proponent of self-experimentation, maybe not to this level or not in the form of like torturing yourself with massive amounts of food. But I think so many people are trying to just like find an influencer's diet and copy it. Or people come to me and they ask questions like, should I be eating organ meats or something like this? And I'm always the first to say like, you should try it for yourself, and have some form of recording, like how you feel, how satisfied you are, how it affects your mental clarity, how it affects your symptoms of asthma and things like that. And, you'll learn way more about yourself that way than just asking what some expert does and following them strictly. You can always start with a template, of course, but I think there's a lot of value in trying things for yourself.
Oh, definitely, man. And yeah, as you say, it's good to kind of have like an initial guide, but then you have to be the one to then guide yourself to finding the way that works for you, really. And the best way to do that is by measuring what you can. And even if it's just rudimentary stuff like just your waist circumference and your weight, but also do try to measure your mental clarity. If you have any particular aches or pains in your body, like knee pain or back pain, try to keep track of that. Just start off with a scale of 10, and say where your back pain is from day one, and then like hopefully you'll see a trend of it going down from like an 8 and a 9 to like a 3 and a 4 or something like that. That's really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I did something similar. I followed a carnivore diet strictly for 3 years, from 2016 to 2019, actually.
Yeah.
And then found, actually not too dissimilar from you, I was having trouble maintaining my weight. And I couldn't tolerate the amount of fat I needed to maintain my weight. So I slowly reintroduced some whole food carbohydrates, like fruit and things like that. And I followed the Whole30 food reintroduction method, where they basically advise that you take 3 days, you eat 1 serving a day of the food you're reintroducing. And they do it 1 food at a time, not even 1 food group. So it'll be like strawberries. And then you record how satisfied were you? How did it make you feel? How was your digestion? And then you return back to your baseline. And then you can choose whether to include that food. And it taught me a lot about like vegetables I can and cannot tolerate, things like that. So not everyone has to be that detailed, but I think something like that can be really helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
So I wanted to talk more about PHC. What are some of the biggest obstacles and barriers you're up against with the messages and research you're trying to do?
Yeah, so one of the biggest obstacle is the fact that what we're kind of advocating for is completely contrary to current guidelines. So we're really saying, don't worry about the fat so much. Any natural fats, like really just don't worry about them so much. You just really need to keep an eye on the quantity and quality of the carbohydrates that you're eating. But current government guidelines in the UK are not too dissimilar from the US. Are that you should be eating anywhere between 50 to 60% of your diet from carbohydrates. But when you've got a population that's increasing in weight and getting more and more type 2 diabetics diagnosed every single year, which is best characterized as an intolerance of carbohydrates, what are you doing? why are you recommending carbohydrates to an increasingly intolerant carbohydrate population? It just makes zero sense to us. But that's the situation that we're in, and we're having to demonstrate that there's a better way that we can go about trying to do this, rather than just focusing on calories and weight loss drugs, which is the current solution, right? These injections that they're giving people on a weekly basis is really kind of really extreme. But it's becoming more and more normalized, which is the really scary thing. And like that's like just it's going to become standard of care unless we try to act sooner rather than later with all of this. That's one of the biggest obstacles that we've got. But then at the same time, you've got a lot of people that have been doing the same thing day in, day out since, the 80s and 90s. And they feel like they just don't need to change their practice, basically. They've been doing the same thing for that long. Why should they change? And trying to convince them that, the scientific literature shows a different picture now, basically. And that, the randomized controlled trials are quite clear on the PHC website. We've got a list of all of the randomized controlled trials between low fat and low carb diets on weight loss. And of those 70, what was it? It was 63 show greater weight loss in low carb. And one of them are equal, and then 7 are greater in weight loss for low fat. But when you break that down further, those 7 aren't statistically significant. It's like it's technically greater, but it's like 0.1 kilograms more, or half a kilogram more. But when you look at the low carb ones, of those 63, 33 of them are statistically significant. So when you look at the statistically significant ones, it's like 33 to 0. And it's like, look, if this is like an American football game, 33 to 0, it's a fairly obvious win for that team. But apparently in randomized controlled trials that doesn't count. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to demonstrate. And so it's about trying to overcome financial interests, but also ego within certain spheres of the healthcare profession, of trying to show them that look, the scientific literature is definitely showing a different picture these days. And what we're doing in the real world, through the work of Dr. David Unwin, we're absolutely demonstrating that this can be done in NHS GP practices on a daily basis. Doesn't take particularly much extra resource, and it saves up to £50,000 per year more than all of the other practices. So if we were to actually extrapolate that to the entirety of the UK, we'd be looking at about £500 million in terms of savings. I mean, who doesn't want to save £500 million on your healthcare bill? So that's what we're really trying to overcome. And it's going to be a long road, but we're really getting there. And the NHS healthcare professionals that are supporting us have kind of a lot of them have gone on that journey themselves, sort of have been in the midst of day-to-day practice and kind of doing the standard stuff. But then when you get patients actually following a low carb lifestyle or something, and have put their type 2 diabetes into remission, you just can't unsee it. It's like, it's blindingly obvious that has worked, so why wouldn't I offer that to the rest of my patients? Right. And so that kind of that slow war of attrition that we're trying to conduct here is just going to take some time, unfortunately. But I only see it going one way, and that's what kind of gives me hope for the future.
Yeah, that's amazing. And are you targeting like a specific set of guidelines that the NHS has, or some other part of the UK government, or multiple organizations? What is it that you're specifically trying to change?
Yes, so it'd be the NICE guidelines. So NICE stands for the National Institute of Health and Care Excellence. Very complicated, but NICE is the organization that is responsible for medical guidelines in the UK. That is both dietary and medical. So at the moment, it kind of does allow healthcare professionals to actually individualize carbohydrate content for patients. But that's just kind of like a bit of a technicality that we're getting in terms of, GPs and nurses being able to actually advise low carb within an NHS setting. But we actually want to have an explicit dietary guideline on low carb and ketogenic diets for type 2 diabetes to begin with, and then we're hoping that will filter out to all of the other conditions that it can help out with. Because type 2 diabetes, we feel like we've got the strongest amount of evidence for that, and it's the most biomechanical. It's the most logical in terms of like the actual biology. That you can actually demonstrate that, look, this is a type 2 diabetes. It's a disorder of carbohydrate metabolism. So it absolutely makes sense to, restrict carbohydrates, and so, we're putting all of those ducks in a row. We're hoping to get the dietary guidelines put in there. And the main mechanism for that is through one of our projects called the Lifestyle Club. And the Lifestyle Club is currently commissioned in 44 GP practices in the UK, which is really cool. So there is absolutely an appetite for this within the NHS. It's just about trying to convince the higher ups about trying to get it commissioned across the nation. Because there are 7,500 GP practices in the UK. So we're like a tiny ickle bit of the pie with 44, but it's a good start. And at the moment, we're crowdfunding for a study that we're partnering with the University of Surrey, which is a university just outside of London. And that study is going to hopefully provide us with the robust scientific data we need to show, the powers that be within the NHS that this is absolutely a scalable, effective, and cost-effective model for people to actually improve their health, put type 2 diabetes into remission, and save the NHS money at the same time. If you go to gofundme.com/TLC study, you can look at all of the details there. Very kindly, the Bazooki Group, who you might have heard of, are actually doing a £20,000 match funding for us at the moment. So the next £20,000 that we raise actually gets doubled. So the donations that you put in now get doubled, because it's gonna cost us £50,000 for this study to do. If we can get there sooner rather than later, then hopefully we can change the guidelines sooner.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll certainly have a link to that in the show notes as well, and folks should check that out. I think it's a great way to contribute. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on today. It's an absolute honor. You inspired me way back in the day. You're a big part of why I started this podcast.
Wow.
So thank you so much. Where else can people follow along and find you and the great work you're doing with PHC?
Excellent. So absolutely go visit the PHC websites at phcuk.org. And then from there, you can kind of look at all of our projects. Obviously, I mentioned that we've got the Lifestyle Club there. We've also got food addiction resources, which is obviously trying to help people that are going through food addiction at the moment. So there's lots of resources on there. If you think that you've got food addiction, there's even kind of a survey on there, a questionnaire that you can take to see if you might have a food addiction, if you have a hunch that you might. And then also Real Food Runners as well. So we've got like an informal running club called Real Food Runners. And we mostly facilitate it through something called Park Run. I know it's not quite as popular in the US, but it's a really big thing in the UK. It's this charity that set up 5K run on Saturday mornings in most of the parks in the UK. And you can go along to that and then run with hundreds of other people on a Saturday morning to do a 5K, and they do all the timing for you as well.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
And stuff like that. It's really cool, and it's all free, 100% free. But what you can do within Parkrun is that you set up your own groups, and so Real Food Runners has its own group, and so you can actually kind of see what all the Real Food Runners times are throughout the UK. And also we've done several meetups now for the Real Food Runners, which has been really nice. And we've got Real Food Runners t-shirts. Like the logo is like a running egg. So it's like an egg with like an eyes and a mouth, and
Nice.
It's like running along, like Egbert, I think is the name of the guy.
Cool.
which is really fun. We've also got a fairly prolific YouTube channel as well, which has got all of our videos on from our conferences in the past, and the videos for this year's conference will be going on there weekly from September. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then you'll get to see all of the great talks from this year.
Great. Excellent. I'll definitely have links to all that. And thanks again for the time, Sam. It's been excellent, and really appreciate you coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for listening to the show. You can find The Scott Mize Show on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Please leave a comment, like, review, or share the podcast with your friends or followers. It helps more people find the show.